The morning rain in Seattle hung uncertain, caught between falling and lingering as mist over Pike Street. Inside Evergreen Company, Emma Clark moved through her opening routine with practiced efficiency. At 29, her hands knew the rhythm without thought, wiping counters in slow circles, checking the espresso machine, arranging pastries behind glass that fogged with condensation. The café smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, a comfort she'd wrapped around herself like armor for the past 6 years. She'd learned to find peace in the predictable, serve the regulars, sketch design ideas during lulls, push away memories of the life she'd once imagined. Her University of Washington acceptance letter still lived in a drawer somewhere, yellowed and irrelevant. Interior design had been a dream before her father's heart attack made dreams a luxury she couldn't afford. The bell above the door chimed. Emma glanced up with her automatic smile, and the world tilted. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Noah Prescott sat in the corner booth by the window, surrounded by 3 people in tailored suits who clearly worked for him. He looked different, older, sharper, wrapped in expensive fabric and confidence. But it was unmistakably him. The boy who'd drawn dream houses on napkins 12 years ago now commanded the room with casual authority. His dark hair fell slightly over his brow when he turned his head, just like it used to. Emma's throat constricted. Her hands froze mid-wipe, the dish towel hanging limp. This couldn't be real. Some cruel trick of exhaustion, perhaps. But no. He laughed at something his associate said, and the sound struck her like sunlight through storm clouds. He had disappeared the morning after prom. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. She'd waited by the lake for months, believing he'd come back. He never did. Now he sat 10 feet away, clearly successful, clearly powerful. And when his eyes finally met hers across the cafe, recognition flickered, half surprise, half something she couldn't name. Then someone called his name, and he looked away. Minutes later, he left. But his business card remained on the counter, embossed letters gleaming. Noah Prescott, CEO, Prescott Urban Developments. Emma couldn't sleep. The rain drummed against her apartment window as memories she'd buried clawed their way to the surface. She saw herself at 17, barefoot on the dock at Maple Creek, Noah beside her with his sketchbook. "Someday I'll build us a house here," he'd said, grinning. "Big windows overlooking the lake. A porch for your lavender garden." She'd laughed, tossing a pebble into the water. "You make it sound so easy." "It will be," he'd promised, hooking his pinky around hers. "Because we'll do it together." The memory shifted to prom night, the gym strung with fairy lights, his hand warm on her back as they swayed to forgotten music. "Promise me," she'd whispered. "Promise you'll never disappear." He'd kissed her forehead. "Never. You're my forever, Em." But forever lasted only until dawn. The next day, he was gone. No call, no note, nothing. For months, she checked her phone obsessively, wrote letters she never sent, sat by the lake waiting for his car to appear. Her mother's gentle voice had finally broken through. "Sometimes people leave not because they stop caring, but because they don't know how to stay." Emma rolled over, squeezing her eyes shut. She'd convinced herself she was over him. But seeing him again had cracked something she thought had healed. At work the next morning, she burned her wrist on the espresso machine, nearly dropped a tray of cups, and forgot 3 orders. Mr. Whitaker, the elderly painter who came every Thursday, noticed immediately. "You look like a woman haunted," he said gently, accepting his cappuccino. "Dreaming of bigger things?" Emma forced a smile. "If paying rent counts as a dream." He shook his head with kind disapproval. "You're too young to let life become only about surviving. I've seen your sketches in that notebook. You've got an artist's heart, Miss Clark. Someday it'll refuse to stay quiet." His words lingered long after he left. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I owe you a truth. Can we talk?" She stared at the screen, her pulse hammering. After 12 years of silence, he wanted to talk. Emma stood before Prescott Tower, 47 stories of glass and steel that scraped the gray Seattle sky. Everything about the building screamed wealth and power, things she'd never had, things Noah clearly commanded now. Her reflection in the lobby's polished marble looked small and out of place. The receptionist led her to an elevator that rose so smoothly she barely felt the movement. When the doors opened to Noah's floor, her breath caught. The office was minimalist elegance, walnut and steel, panoramic city views. But what stopped her heart were the walls. Framed sketches covered every surface. Their sketches. The dream houses they'd drawn together at 17, the lakeside studio they'd planned, even rough napkin drawings with their initials in the corners, NP plus EC. He'd kept everything. You inspired all of this. Noah's voice came from behind her. She turned. He stood in the doorway, no longer the stranger from the café, but the boy she'd known, aged by years and weighted by something heavy in his expression. You kept our drawings, she whispered. I kept everything. He stepped closer. Please sit. I need to explain. She sat, though her mind screamed to run. Noah settled across from her, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Rain streaked the windows. The morning after prom, he began, his voice rough, my father found out about us. About you, your family, where you lived, what your father did for a living. He gave me an ultimatum. Leave for London immediately and cut all contact, or he'd destroy everything you had. Your scholarship, your father's job, your mother's pension. He had the power, Emma, and he would have used it. Emma's chest tightened. So you just left? I tried to refuse. But he showed me letters he'd already drafted, connections he'd leverage. He was prepared to blacklist you from every design program in the state. Noah's jaw clenched. I was 18 and terrified. I thought disappearing was the only way to protect you. You didn't even try to tell me. He monitored everything. My phone, my email, my mail. I wrote you dozens of letters. Every one was intercepted. His voice cracked. When he died last year, I found them in his safe. Every word I tried to send you, hidden away like they never existed. Emma stared at him, her world fracturing. 12 years, Noah. I know. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a black folder. But there's more. Things about our families that go back further than us. Secrets that explain why my father was so determined to keep us apart. The Prescott Holdings archive facility felt like a mausoleum for secrets. Noah led Emma through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced men in expensive suits. Generations of Prescotts who'd built their empire on other people's struggles. In a private room, Noah spread documents across the table. My grandfather, Michael Prescott, acquired land in Maple Creek during the 1980s financial crisis. Your family's land. He promised to return it after stabilizing his business, but he died before fulfilling that promise. My father buried the evidence deliberately. Emma's hands trembled as she scanned the papers. Deeds, contracts, promises written but never kept. There's more, Noah continued, sliding another folder toward her. Michael felt guilty about what he'd done. After your father started working at the Maple Creek factory, my grandfather set up a silent investment in your mother's name, Silver Grain Holdings. It funneled dividends to your family for years. Money that helped you survive after your father died. My mother never mentioned this, Emma whispered. She didn't know. The payments came through a trust, disguised as employee benefits. He pulled out an old photograph. This is your grandmother and my grandfather outside the factory in 1965. Emma stared at the image, two people laughing together, unaware their families would become enemies. They knew each other. They were friends. My grandfather wrote that your grandmother convinced him to keep the plant open after a fire nearly destroyed it. He never forgot her kindness. Noah's voice softened. Your father and my grandfather corresponded for years. They shared a dream of turning that factory into a worker-owned cooperative. My father destroyed that dream when he took control. Emma felt dizzy. Everything she believed about her family's simple, honest life was built on hidden Prescott money. Her mother's signature appeared on documents she didn't remember signing. Her father had worked alongside the man whose son would later force Noah away. Why show me this now, she asked. Because I've been working to transfer your mother's shares back officially. What was stolen needs to be returned. He met her gaze. And because you deserve to know that our families were never just victim and villain. We're bound by generations of guilt and attempts at atonement that got buried under my father's pride. Emma sat at her mother's kitchen table, the folders spread between them. Leah Clark read in silence, her expression unreadable beneath the soft lamplight. Finally, she exhaled slowly. I knew Michael Prescott helped the factory during hard times, Leah said quietly. Your father mentioned it once. But I never imagined this. She looked up at Emma. Be careful, sweetheart. A man who spent his life building walls doesn't take them down without reason. Ask yourself, Who benefits when the truth comes out? The warning planted doubt just as Emma's heart had begun to soften. 2 nights later, as Emma closed the cafe, a woman in a navy trench coat walked through the door. Mid-30s, elegant, with sharp gray eyes that studied Emma like a predator assessing prey. "We're closed," Emma said politely. "I'm not here for coffee." The woman stepped closer. "My name is Clara Monroe. I used to work for Prescott Urban Developments, vice president until last year. I'm here because you need to know who Noah Prescott really is." Emma's stomach dropped. Clara opened her bag and placed a folder on the counter. Inside were newspaper clippings, financial documents, and a photograph of a man Emma didn't recognize. "Thomas Reed," Clara said, tapping the photo. "He ran Harper and Reed Designs. Talented architect, ethical, idealistic. 5 years ago, Noah's company orchestrated a hostile takeover. They bled Reed's firm dry, pulled contracts, poached clients, sabotaged his reputation. 2 months later, Reed jumped from his office balcony." Emma stared at the clippings, her throat tight. "Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Noah started the Reed Foundation immediately after Reed's widow filed a wrongful death suit." Clara continued coldly. "The suit was withdrawn after a very convenient settlement. He calls it atonement. I call it damage control. Why are you telling me this?" Clara's smile was thin. "Because I've seen this before. Noah Prescott destroys people, then rewrites himself as their savior. He hides ruthlessness behind empathy. And right now, you're his latest redemption project." She handed Emma a business card. "When you're ready to see the proof, the real proof, call me. I kept copies of everything." After Clara left, Emma stood alone in the empty cafe, the folder heavy in her hands. Her phone buzzed. "I know what you learned today. Please don't believe everything she says." "Let me explain." Emma stared at the message, suspended between competing truths, unsure which version of Noah Prescott to believe. Emma couldn't sleep. Clara's words circled her mind like vultures. He destroys people, then rewrites himself as their savior. She lay in the darkness, listening to rain hammer against her window, each drop a reminder that some storms never truly passed. At 2 in the morning, her phone lit up with a message. "I'm outside. Please, just 5 minutes." She shouldn't have gone down. Every rational part of her screamed to stay in her apartment, to let the past bury itself once and for all. But she grabbed her jacket and descended the narrow stairs, finding Noah's black sedan idling at the curb, rain streaming down the windshield like tears. She opened the passenger door and slid inside, water dripping from her hair. The interior smelled of cedar and leather, expensive, foreign, nothing like the old truck he used to drive. "How did you know Clara came to see me?" Emma asked without preamble. Noah's hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "Because I know her. I know what she's capable of." He turned to face Emma, his eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "Let me tell you what really happened with Thomas Reed." Emma crossed her arms, creating distance in the confined space. "I'm listening." "Reed wasn't the saint Clara made him out to be," Noah began, his voice steady but pained. "For months, we'd been losing bids to competitors who somehow knew our exact proposals, our pricing structures, everything. We hired a forensic accountant who traced it back to Reed. He was stealing proprietary designs and selling them to stay afloat. His firm was drowning in debt from bad investments. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through saved documents. Here, emails from Reed's business partner confirming the theft, bank records showing payments from our competitors. I confronted Thomas privately, offered to handle it quietly if he'd stop and get help. He refused, said I couldn't prove anything without destroying my own reputation in the process." Emma studied the documents, her chest tight. They looked legitimate. Timestamps, transaction records, correspondence that painted a very different picture than Clara's narrative. 2 weeks later, he jumped. Noah continued, his voice cracking. "I didn't push him to that edge, Emma. But I didn't save him either. I saw a man drowning and I threw him an anchor instead of a rope because I was too focused on protecting what was mine." He looked away, jaw clenched. The foundation, the settlement with his widow, it wasn't PR. It was guilt. Pure, crushing guilt for not recognizing how broken he was. "And Clara?" Emma asked quietly. Noah exhaled slowly. "She wanted more than a professional relationship. After I made it clear that wouldn't happen, She started leaking confidential data to undermine me. When I had proof, I asked for her resignation instead of prosecution. She's been trying to destroy me ever since. He showed her text messages, emails that supported his version. But then he did something Emma didn't expect. He set his phone down and turned to her fully, his expression stripped of all pretense. "Here's the truth Clara won't tell you, and I won't hide from you," he said. "Even if my intentions were good, my methods were ruthless. I did use people to build this empire. I prioritized winning over compassion. I became the kind of man who could look at Thomas Reed's desperation and see a threat instead of a human being falling apart." His voice broke. "I became my father, Emma. The man who taught me that love makes you weak, that power is the only thing that matters. And I hated myself for it." Tears streaked down his face, and Emma realized she'd never seen him cry before, not even when they were teenagers making promises they couldn't keep. "She's not wrong about me," Noah whispered. "I did terrible things. But after Reed died, something broke in me. I looked at everything I'd built and realized it was hollow, empty. The only pure thing in my entire life was you, and I destroyed that too." He reached into his coat and pulled out a yellowed envelope. "This is the last letter I wrote you before my father found it. I was 18, terrified, and desperate. I want you to have it now, not as an excuse, but as proof that I loved you then, and I never stopped." Emma took the letter with trembling hands. The envelope was worn, the paper inside fragile with age. She unfolded it carefully and began to read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "Em, I don't know if this will ever reach you. My father watches everything now. He says loving you is weakness, but he's wrong. You're the only thing that ever made me strong. If I could choose between his empire and one more day by the lake with you, I'd choose you every time. I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me. Please don't think I stopped caring. You're my forever, even if forever has to wait." The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the roof like a heartbeat. Emma folded the letter carefully, her own tears falling freely now. She looked at Noah, not the billionaire, not the ghost from her past, but a man suspended between who he'd been forced to become and who he was trying to be. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said finally. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to prove I'm different now, that I'm trying." Emma reached for the door handle, then paused. "What does that even look like? Proving you've changed?" Noah pulled something else from his jacket, a folded document with an official seal. "This is the deed to the old Maple Creek factory. I bought it 6 months ago. I'm rebuilding it into a community design center. Half in your mother's name, half in yours. Not as charity, but as restitution for what my family stole. I want to finish what our grandfathers started. What we dreamed about when we were kids who still believed in building beautiful things." Emma stared at the deed, her mind reeling. "You're rebuilding the factory? We always said we'd build something together," he said softly. "Now we can. Not as we were, but as we are, flawed, damaged, but trying to do better." She stepped out into the rain without another word, clutching the letter and the deed to her chest. Behind her, Noah's car remained at the curb until she disappeared into her building. And for the first time in 12 years, Emma felt something she'd thought was dead, the dangerous, terrifying flutter of hope. 3 days later, Emma drove to Maple Creek for the first time in 6 years. The small town hadn't changed much. The same weathered storefronts, the same lake glittering beyond the trees, the same weight of memory pressing against her chest. But as she rounded the bend toward the old textile factory, her breath caught. The building was alive with activity. Workers in hard hats moved across scaffolding, reinforcing brick walls that had crumbled with neglect. Broken windows were being replaced with glass that caught the afternoon light. The rust and decay she remembered were giving way to something deliberate, something hopeful. A bronze plaque near the entrance bore her mother's name, Leah Clark, in honor of those who built dreams here. Emma parked her truck and sat for a moment, overwhelmed. This wasn't some abstract promise or empty gesture. This was real, steel and brick and human labor transforming ruins into possibility. She found Noah near the south entrance, dressed in worn jeans and a faded work shirt, a hard hat tucked under his arm. He looked nothing like the polished CEO from downtown. He looked like the boy who used to draw houses on napkins, his hands dusty with the work of building rather than commanding. "You came," he said, surprise and relief mingling in his voice. I needed to see it for myself. Emma walked toward him slowly, taking in every detail. The careful restoration of original brickwork, the wide windows positioned to flood the interior with natural light, the open floor plan that preserved the building's industrial character while making space for creation. Noah led her inside. The transformation was breathtaking. What had been a monument to failed dreams was becoming something alive. The West Wing will be studio space for local artists, he explained, gesturing toward an area where workers were installing climate control systems. The East Wing is for design education, drafting tables, digital stations, a materials library. And here, he walked her to a corner where light poured through tall windows. This will be a café. I was thinking of calling it Evergreen. Emma's throat tightened. He remembered. After everything, he remembered the small café where their story had restarted. The plans incorporate ideas from our old sketches, Noah continued, pulling out blueprints. Emma recognized elements immediately. The vaulted ceilings they'd drawn at 17, the natural light emphasis, the blend of industrial and organic elements. He'd taken their teenage dreams and made them structurally sound, architecturally possible, real. Why? She asked, her voice barely steady. Why go this far? Noah met her eyes. Because I can't undo the past, but I can build something that gives it meaning. Because this project isn't about me earning forgiveness. It's about creating something that outlasts both of us. And because, he hesitated, you deserve to see your vision become real, even if I'm not part of it. Over the following weeks, Emma found herself returning to the site. At first, she told herself she was just observing, ensuring the project honored her family's history properly. But gradually, she started contributing. A suggestion about interior paint colors here, a sketch of furniture layouts there, thoughts on lighting fixtures that would complement the restored brick. Zoe visited one afternoon and found Emma kneeling on the floor, surrounded by fabric swatches and design magazines, completely absorbed. You're glowing, Zoe said quietly. I haven't seen you like this since college. Emma looked up, startled. I'm just helping with some decisions. No, Zoe said gently. You're designing. You're doing what you were always meant to do. And you're happy. The words settled over Emma like recognition. She was happy. For the first time in years, she felt the creative spark she'd buried reigniting. Every choice, every color, every texture, every spatial decision reconnected her with the part of herself she'd sacrificed. Ben texted one evening. Mom sent me photos of the factory. She says you're finally doing what you were meant to. Dad would be proud. Emma sat in her apartment that night, looking at her own sketches spread across the kitchen table, detailed renderings of the studio spaces, complete with measurements, material specifications, and notes about natural light patterns. She'd created them without consciously deciding to, her hands remembering skills her heart had tried to forget. Her mother visited the site the following week. Leah walked through the half-finished spaces in silence, running her hands along restored brick walls where her husband had once worked. She stopped at the memorial plaque Noah had commissioned, her eyes glistening. Your father believed this place could be something beautiful, Leah said softly. He and Michael Prescott used to talk about it, about turning the factory into something owned by the people who worked here, something that served the community. She turned to Emma. I don't know if Noah Prescott is doing this for the right reasons or the wrong ones. But I know your father would have wanted this dream to live, regardless of who built it. As autumn deepened, Emma's involvement became indispensable. She designed the educational wing's layout, selected fixtures for the café, created mood boards for each studio space. Noah deferred to her judgment on aesthetic decisions, and they fell into an easy rhythm, debating tile choices, laughing over measurement mistakes, sharing coffee from a thermos while reviewing blueprints on makeshift tables. One afternoon, as they stood side by side examining paint samples against the restored brick, their hands brushed. The contact sent electricity through Emma's chest, sharp and undeniable. Noah felt it too. She saw the recognition in his eyes, the question he didn't dare ask aloud. I'm not ready, she said quietly, though she didn't pull her hand away. I know, he replied. But when you are, if you are, I'll be here. Mr. Whitaker made the trip from Seattle specifically to see the project. He walked through the spaces slowly, studying every detail with an artist's eye. Finally, he found Emma in the main gallery, sketching window treatments. You're awake, he said simply. Finally awake. Emma looked up from her work, pencil still in hand. What do you mean? That artist's heart I told you about, he said with a knowing smile. It refused to stay quiet, just like I said it would. Now the question is, what are you going to do with this awakening? Emma looked around at the space she'd helped create, at the community already forming around this project, at Noah across the room discussing construction timelines with contractors. She'd spent 12 years surviving, building walls, protecting herself from hope. But survival wasn't living, and protection wasn't peace. I'm going to build, she said finally. Whatever comes next, I'm going to keep building. The exposé hit the Seattle Business Journal on a Tuesday morning, and by noon, Emma's world had detonated. Prescott Urban's pattern of predatory acquisition, how one billionaire destroys small businesses while performing public redemption, screamed the headline. The article was devastating. Interviews with multiple former business owners who claimed Noah's company had systematically destroyed their livelihoods, financial records showing aggressive acquisition tactics, and a detailed breakdown of the Thomas Reed case that painted Noah as a corporate predator hiding behind charity. But the paragraph that made Emma's hands shake mentioned her by name. The Clark Studio Initiative, currently under construction in Maple Creek, has been positioned as Prescott's philanthropic pivot. However, sources close to the project reveal that Emma Clark, Prescott's former girlfriend from high school, is the primary beneficiary. Industry insiders question whether this represents genuine community development or reputation laundering through a carefully orchestrated personal redemption narrative. Her phone exploded. Unknown numbers, journalists requesting comments, curiosity seekers wanting the story behind the story. At the cafe, customers who'd never spoken to her suddenly had opinions about her choices, her judgment, her role in Noah's redemption theater. Emma locked herself in the bathroom during her lunch break and pressed her forehead against the cool tile wall, fighting panic. Everything private had become public. Everything complicated had been flattened into scandal. She was no longer a person. She was a prop in someone else's narrative. Zoe found her there 20 minutes later. You okay? No. Emma's voice was raw. Everyone's looking at me like I'm either a victim or an accomplice. Like I don't have agency in my own story. Then take it back, Zoe said firmly. Tell your story. On your terms. But Emma couldn't. Not yet. Because doubt had crept back in, poisonous and insidious. What if Clara was right? What if the factory was just an elaborate manipulation? What if Noah's tears in the car had been calculated, his vulnerability performed? That evening, journalists descended on the construction site. Workers were questioned, photographers captured half-finished spaces, and reporters framed the project through Clara's lens. Expensive penance from a man trying to buy his way out of accountability. Emma stopped going to Maple Creek. Noah called, texted, left voicemails she couldn't bring herself to answer. The silence between them grew heavy with unspoken questions and accumulated doubt. Then Zoe confronted her at the cafe during closing. Is this what you want? She demanded. To let public opinion decide your truth? To be passive in your own life again? I don't know what I want. Emma's voice cracked. Maybe everyone's right. Maybe I'm just another casualty of Noah Prescott's redemption complex. Or maybe, Zoe said quietly, you're terrified that if you believe in him and he lets you down again, there won't be anything left of you to rebuild. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. Emma had survived Noah leaving once. She wasn't sure she could survive it again. While Emma spiraled, Leah took action. She contacted Clara Monroe directly, demanding a meeting. They met at a neutral coffee shop downtown, two women on opposite sides of the same man's story. You care about my daughter, Leah said without preamble. Or you care about destroying Noah Prescott. Which is it? Clara's smile was cold. Can it be both? No, Leah said firmly. Because Emma is a person, not a weapon. And I need to know if what you told her is truth or revenge. Something flickered in Clara's expression, a crack in the armor. It's truth. Noah Prescott ruins people. I saw it firsthand. Then show me. Not the edited version. Everything. Clara hesitated, then opened her laptop. As Leah reviewed the documents Clara had compiled, she noticed inconsistencies, dates that didn't align, quotes attributed to sources who couldn't have said them, financial records with gaps that suggested selective editing. The Thomas Reed timeline was particularly problematic. Key emails were missing. Context had been stripped away. You altered these, Leah said quietly. I highlighted the pattern. Clara corrected defensively. No, you created a narrative by removing anything that complicated it. Leia closed the laptop. What really happened between you and Noah? For a long moment, Clara said nothing. Then, slowly, the story emerged. She had been brilliant at her job, one of the few women in the upper echelons of Prescott Urban. She'd worked harder than anyone, sacrificed more, and when Noah took over from his father, she believed they could build something together. Not just professionally, she'd imagined partnership in every sense. He never saw me that way, Clara said, her voice tight with years of rejection. I made my feelings clear, and he was kind about it. Respectful. But kind rejection still feels like rejection. And when I made a mistake, leaked some data accidentally during a negotiation, he asked for my resignation instead of giving me a chance to fix it. So you've spent years trying to destroy him, Leia said. I spent years trying to show people who he really is, Clara corrected. Yes, I emphasized certain facts and downplayed others. But the core truth remains. Noah Prescott built his empire by being ruthless. The factory project doesn't erase that. No, Leia agreed. It doesn't. But motivation matters. You're not trying to protect people from him. You're trying to make him suffer the way you did. And you're using my daughter to do it. Clara's jaw tightened. Your daughter deserves to know what she's getting into. My daughter, Leia said, standing, deserves to make her own choices based on complete truths, not weaponized half-truths. If you actually cared about Emma instead of your vendetta, you'd understand the difference. Leia spent 2 days verifying Clara's accusations. The truth was complicated. Noah had been ruthless, but not criminal. Reed's suicide wasn't his fault. Clara's anger was personal, though some of it was justified. Meanwhile, the controversy exploded. News coverage, divided opinions, stalled construction. Emma, overwhelmed by calls and criticism, finally broke down at work. Zoe found her crying in the storage room. You have to choose, she said, between surviving and living. That night, Leia arrived with her findings. Clara lied about some things, but told some truths. Noah hurt people, but he's trying to be better. The question is, do you believe that's enough? Emma hesitated. What should I do? Stop asking what others think, Leia said gently. What do you want, even if it's terrifying? Emma looked at her mother's calloused hands. I want to finish the studio. To build, even if it breaks me again. Leia smiled. Then that's what you do. Before dawn, Emma drove to Maple Creek. The half-finished studio glowed in fog, her grandmother's initials carved into old brick beside Michael Prescott's. Noah was there, working alone. I didn't think you'd come back, he whispered. I did, Emma said. Let's keep building. Imperfectly, but together. Emma stood in the unfinished studio, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. I'm not doing this for you, she told Noah. I'm doing it for me. I'm done letting fear run my life. I'm going to finish this project, tell the truth, and reclaim my narrative. Noah nodded. Whatever you decide, I'm here. Then prove it, she said. With honesty. With consistency. Not grand gestures. I will, he promised. Silence filled the space, broken only by morning light through fogged windows. Then Noah added softly, I'm not doing this to win you back. I'm doing it because it's right. Even if you walk away, I'll still finish it. For you, for your mother, for everyone hurt by my father's greed. Something in his sincerity eased the weight between them. Emma exhaled. Then let's finish it together. Weeks passed. Emma gave an honest interview about the Clark Studio initiative, her family's ties to the Prescotts, her father's dream of worker ownership, and Noah's attempts to make amends. The resulting article, Building Forward, How Two Families Are Transforming Generational Trauma into Community Hope, reframed the story not as scandal, but as rebirth. The community responded. Former workers shared memories, students volunteered, donations trickled in. The project gained life. Emma and Noah rebuilt trust through steady work, not declarations. Over coffee and blueprints, they found a new rhythm. When his hand brushed hers one afternoon, she didn't pull away. It's terrifying, she admitted, but it's okay. Months later, snow blanketed Seattle for the first time in years. The grand opening of the Clark Studio initiative drew a crowd of former factory workers and artists. The old industrial space glowed with reclaimed warmth, brick, wood, light, and the initials of the two men who'd started it all. A memorial plaque read, "In memory of those who labored here, in hope for those who will create here. When Emma spoke, her words came from the heart. This place held broken promises for a long time. But broken doesn't mean finished. Sometimes things must fall apart before they can be rebuilt, better, more honest. This studio exists because people chose to face the past and build forward. Applause echoed through the gallery. For the first time, Emma felt peace. Later, Noah led her to the annex she'd designed. A small, perfect space overlooking the lake. It held all the details she loved. A drafting table, books, lavender on the table. "It's yours," he said quietly. "A home, if you want it." Emma hesitated. "I can't promise forever, but I can promise today. And tomorrow." "That's enough," he said. They stood hand in hand as snow fell outside. Two people choosing honesty over illusion, building something real from what had once been broken. That night by the fire, Emma whispered, "What if we fail?" "Then we'll have failed doing something beautiful," Noah replied. She smiled, understanding at last that healing wasn't about perfection, it was about rebuilding. Some buildings, like some loves, had to break before they could be made stronger. And Emma Clark, after years of surviving, was finally ready to live. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.